"Don't forget who pays your rent," the millionaire's wife said, tapping her glass. The new waitress did not flinch. 10 minutes later, the woman everyone feared could not lift her eyes, and the room stood for the quiet stranger who saved a life. They called the rooftop the Blue Terrace, a place of glass, gold edges, and careful smiles. Staff moved with small steps there, not because the floor was slippery, but because one woman liked the world to make way for her. The millionaire's wife wore power like a bright coat. People felt it from across the room. Even the manager's grin bent when she walked in. The new waitress arrived with steady hands and a simple name tag, Mara. A thin scar crossed her forearm like a pale thread. She wore a braided bracelet the color of sun-faded rope. She was small, but the way she stood made space. The wife saw none of that. She saw new, and new meant weak. "Bring it back hot," the wife said, "not warm." Hot! The words were meant to pinch, not guide. Mara nodded once. No eye roll, no bite. She moved as if the world were not a test. That calm made the wife feel unseen, and that more than anything bothered her. Mara's quiet had a long history. Before the Blue Terrace, she learned to work in a heat that tasted like dust. The scent of antiseptic sat in her hair no matter how many showers she took. Nights hummed with rotors and radio breath. She held pressure on wounds and counted faint beats with 2 fingers on her neck. She learned the weight of a human head in her lap and the way fear thins when a calm voice says, "Stay with me." There was a friend named Ortiz who joked to keep others steady. He kept a photo of his little sister in his helmet. He promised to show Mara the best taco stand back home. A road broke open one day and took that promise away. After that, she folded grief small and set it inside the same pocket where she kept the challenge coin. When she came home, noise felt sharp. She tried jobs that asked for smiles that were too big and days that were too empty. She chose the rooftop because it kept her moving and gave her a chance to serve without being a headline. She sent part of her tips to a family she had never met because Ortiz had once said, "If anything happens, make sure they are okay." The bracelet on her wrist was a promise to stay useful. Tired was fine. Quiet was fine. Useful, always. The wife did not notice as she saw a chance to prove she held the center of the room. She sent back dishes for tiny reasons. A leaf too tall, a drizzle too thin. She asked if someone trained could take over the table. The manager swallowed and pasted on a smile. People who had never liked the wife stared at their plates. Silence grew in the space where courage should have stood. Mara kept moving. She poured water. She warmed a cup for an older woman whose hands shook. She cut a child's pasta into smaller bites and wiped the sauce with a clean napkin. She said little. Her stillness did not come from fear. It came from knowing her ground. Across the room, a man with gray at his temples watched. He kept his tie loose and his eyes kind. He knew the look of a person who had seen more than she said. He noticed the bracelet and the scar. He felt a memory rise of a hallway with photos under glass and names etched on small plates. The wife raised her chin. She lowered her voice and made it heavy. "People like you are replaceable," she said, so that nearby tables could hear. A few heads turned. A young server winced. The manager took a half step forward and then stopped. Mara's face did not change. She set a plate down with care and moved on. Her quiet landed like a stone in a restless pond. Then the night shifted. The wife's husband laughed too hard at a story and forgot to chew. His breath clipped. His hand went to his throat. His chair scraped. His eyes flashed wide with a fear as old as life. A fork hit a plate and fell to the floor. The room froze. Mara did not ask permission. She was already behind him, feet set, arms around his middle. She pulled up and in, a strong practiced motion. Once, twice. The third time, a small piece loosened and flew to the linen. Air rushed back into his chest. He bent over and drew in breath like it was the first one he had ever earned. Color began to crawl back up his neck. The wife stared, shock draining the edge from her posture. Words crowded her mouth and found no place to go. The manager's hand shook as he reached for the first aid kit, late but trying. The gray-templed man stood. He placed his hand over his heart and remained very still, a sign older than applause. One by one, people rose into a quiet line of thanks. No one spoke. The sound of standing was enough. Mara kept a hand on the husband's shoulder and counted his breaths in her head. She looked into his eyes, and he felt the room calm around that look. When he nodded 3 steady inhales later, she nodded back. The wife moved as if to take over, then paused. She saw the small photo by the hostess stand, a black and white image of dusty faces under a rough sun. One of those faces was younger, but the eyes were the same as the waitress now by her husband's side. The gray temple man spoke, not loud, just sure. He said he had seen that face in a hall that honors service. He did not use titles or rank. He used a sentence that felt like a bow to a story larger than the room. Some vows do not end when the uniform does. The wife's throat worked. She found words and set them down with care. She thanked Mara. She said she was sorry. It was not a grand speech. It did not need to be. It was the first time she had spoken without the weight of a ring behind her voice. Mara did not take a reward. She asked the manager to start a sign-up for a short class on choking and first aid for the whole staff. She offered to teach it after her shift. The manager nodded fast, grateful for something right to do. People began to breathe easier. They did not sit yet. They looked at Mara the way people look at the horizon right after a storm breaks and the light returns. Someone near the door found a donation jar that had been half hidden. It was for families who were healing. The wife walked to it and slipped an envelope inside. She stayed there a heartbeat longer than needed, as if learning how to stand in a room without owning it. 3 simple lines began to float through the room, passed in whispers and later written under shared posts. Dignity does not need a stage. Silence is a spine, not an absence. Power that needs fear fails its first real test. When the husband could stand, he held out his hand to Mara. She did not shake it right away. She looked at him as if to ask, "Are you truly okay?" He nodded. Then she took his hand in a brief, steady clasp. The room exhaled. By closing time, the story had already stepped off the roof and into the city. The staff signed up for the class. The jar by the door filled. The manager set the small photo where more people would see it. The wife left with her head lower and her heart perhaps a degree wider. She would remember the night when she felt the urge to snap her fingers. She would hear another voice instead. Choose respect. Mara walked home under a soft sky. She carried a quiet no one else could see. She touched the coin in her pocket to mark the end of another day where her hands stayed useful. She did not need thanks. She had breath in her lungs and a promise kept. If this story reached you, let it sit with you for a moment. Share where you're watching from. Tell what line stayed with you. And if you want more stories that honor the ones who do the right thing without noise, subscribe and stay close. There are many quiet heroes. We will keep telling their stories.